Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 235 of the Canadian Football Countdown and proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network. The 110th Grey Cup is just a couple days away, with the Montreal Alouettes and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers going head-to-head in Hamilton to take home the top prize of the season. Yes, the season is coming to an end. Championship game is here, and we're here today to break it all down, preview the matchups. We'll talk about how these teams got here, break down the positional matchups, talk storylines, all that fun stuff. To do so, we've got three of us here this evening. Mike is away sick, unfortunately, but I'm Ryan, joined as usual by Trey and Adam. Let's bring them on in here. Trey, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing fantastic. I want to ask Adam, does it make you feel any better seeing another team lose a game because of too many men, or does it still?
The Buffalo Bills pulled the 2009 Saskatchewan Roughriders Grey Cup special this week.
I had to send a couple people the highlight link to that. I have some Bills fans, and they're like, oh, that's what people were meaning on Twitter, that the Roughriders have done it first. So, and then he says, well, Grey Cup's a lot worse than Week 10. And I was like, yeah, you're right, it is. But anyway, I'm doing great.
Sad part is probably more people watch that Week 10 game than the 2009 Grey Cup. Nevertheless, I'm doing okay. I mean, we have I'm in the middle of two worlds right now, of course, with hockey season kind of getting underway here this weekend, and worrying also about the Grey Cup and trying to watch and go. And I eventually have to do some humble bragging, though, because I'm still undefeated in playoffs. Nobody's beaten me yet, or gotten me making a wrong pick yet. We'll see how we do later on this week here. But, yeah, Montreal, that was quite an upset, wasn't it?
Who called that, I wonder?
I have no idea. Never heard of it.
Yeah. I think two people called that on this show. But.
I mean, not to get into it too far, but like we talked about last week on the show of like 9 different things that needed to go right for Montreal to win that football game. And like all 9 of them happened. Like that was the exact, like the only way Montreal was going to advance. They managed to do it.
Actually, all 9, and plus also a Montreal touchdown return from a kickoff. So, you know, that was just.
Oh, yeah. And by all 9, I'm talking about the 9 turnovers by the Argos. So,
that too. Yeah.
Yeah. Wild football game. A couple enticing football games in the division finals. Leaves us with Winnipeg and Montreal in the Grey Cup here. We'll talk about it all throughout the evening here. We'll also take your comments and questions in our live chat throughout the night, thanks to presenting sponsor Game Time TV, which you can learn more about by visiting GameTimeTV.ca or following on Facebook, facebook.com/GameTimeTVMB. Send those comments, send those questions into our live chat throughout the night. I want to give a quick shout out here as well. One of our usual commenters, not in the chat tonight, but he is listening all the way from Costa Rica. Richard, shout out to you. We're international now, guys. There's a lot of pressure. I mean, we could have been. If you're listening internationally, I mean, cool, sweet. Shout out to you.
Also, Chris in the chat, why you got to remind me of this stuff? Just why? First they go after me with 09. Now they go after me with the quarterbacks. Come on, man.
Great.
You don't know what I'm referring to also for the podcast listeners. Chris put in there, what were the last 2 Rider quarterbacks before Trevor Harris was in the Riderville? And it was Cody Fiorardo and Zach Caleros. And the guy before that, Vernon Adams. So, you know, been good.
How's Jake Dolagala doing, Adam? All right. Before we go any further, we do want to acknowledge that the Canadian Football Countdown is brought to you from Treaty 1 territory, traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation, as well as from Treaty 4 territory, traditional territory of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and Métis Nation. Cue the usual weekly shout out. Check out the Discord community. We've got lots of great chatter going on there. As always, there's a link in the episode description. It is free to join. We'll have a live Grey Cup game thread going there, and surely more discussion leading up to it as well as throughout the off season. And speaking of the off season, you know, we're rounding out the 2023 season here on the podcast, but we've got a lot of fun stuff ahead on the schedule, including Sunday night after the game, about an hour after the game ends. We will be live with our Grey Cup post-game show, our live recap podcast there, and we'll break down whatever the end result ends up being of this game. And then after that, we'll be back on Wednesday night for our season wrap-up show. We'll take a look back maybe at some of our preseason predictions, talk about heading into the offseason, which teams we have our eye on, which players we have our eye on the most, and all of that fun stuff there. And then, regular podcast episodes, probably a few and far between over the holiday season a little bit, but you know what? We'll put together a podcast year in review at the end of the year. I know I asked last week for clips of your favorite moments of the podcast from this season. We did get some in, and if we get any more in as well, we'll compile them all together for an end of year or early next year episode on that. But we also have some more fun off-season content planned on the YouTube channel. So if you're an audio feed listener, you might want to subscribe over there. Trey, you want to talk about the idea you kind of came up with?
Did I come up with this? I know I'm the ringleader of it now, but I don't remember who came up with it. But sounds like we're gonna have some form of video game streaming. We'll probably do a couple games, right? But Madden will be the main focus. Adam might have to blow off the Xbox and get the Farm Simulator. What year do you have? Like 12?
I think 21 or 23.
21, okay. Hey, you got the pretty new one then. That's not bad for that. So we'll definitely see how that goes. So yeah, we're coming to the live stream business now. Like that's where all the money is. Like that's where all the money is nowadays on podcasts and stuff. So I mean, why talk CFL? We just should be playing video game.
Yeah, and we'll have CFL talk mixed in and here and there throughout it as well. But during the quiet news periods, you know what? If you enjoy the content, if you enjoy the banter back and forth here, we'll have some of that as well, and we'll have some fun with it. With the CFC Madden cast. Trey is going to lead that. We're for episode 1. We're picking which team we're taking over and bringing them to the promised land. And you've got Adam and I and Mike, if he's free, in on the commentary. Trey is the coach, and we're going to help make some ownership decisions here and see what we can do.
Yeah, feel free to put in the Discord, because we've had some team. We're going to have like a random pick team. We'll do the duck race, right?
Oh yeah, of course we're doing the duck race.
We'll pick some stupid ideas like, can we what would happen if Adams Browns, Deshaun Watson didn't have season-ending surgery, or the Jets and Aaron Rodgers, or maybe Mike's Cowboys could actually win. Maybe we'll see, but it depends on what the Ducks say.
The Cowboys will never win. It don't matter what the Ducks say.
I know. I'm really hoping that Duck's gonna win. I know it.
As Trey tanks the season, we have to consider firing him.
Just intentionally throw the ball away every play, just like Dak Prescott really does. Anyway, it's fine.
Yeah, so that content probably won't be live. We'll probably record it, upload it, put it on the YouTube channel, but look forward to that throughout the off season as well. And we'll see.
Just because I'm probably going to do a lot of cussing. Just so if I throw my controller, we can bleep it out.
So if anybody has any suggestions of noises to blank out the Trey swears, let's put it in the Discord channel.
No air horns, guys. No air horns while I'm playing.
Yeah, air horns aren't allowed, right? They're not allowed at the Grey Cup, so they have been officially banned from the stadium. But let's start talking. Of course, we got to get to Grey Cup. We'll get to the Grey Cup, but it is also Grey Cup week with a number of different events going on. The CFL Awards show is in the, I think, the next couple of days, maybe tomorrow. I know there's concerts Friday night and stuff. And one event that took place already was the annual State of the League address from Commissioner Randy Ambrosie. Touched on a number of different topics, including expansion, the stats system, the playoff scheduling, you name it. What was the most notable thing for you guys that jumped out to you? Adam, let's go to you first.
I think it's pretty interesting to see Randy talking about, well, again, he's talked about it for so long already, the Halifax expansion. It sounds like it's pretty much, how did he put it? Bait or get caught or pull up the bait already for the expansion. I think he's starting to get to the point where either this got to happen or this doesn't happen. just by the sounds of it, anyways, from what he made this sound like. I'll just take a quick little read of what exactly he said there. Fisher cut bait. Desire to 10 teams is as strong as ever, but the quest is reaching a breaking point. So I think we're getting an answer sooner rather than later, maybe finally on this. If it actually has some ownership, if it actually has some legs, if it has some sea legs. Anyways, it's very interesting to see this happen. And I know there's a lot of people that would love a 10th team in the CFL. It'd be very interesting to see what happens with Randy with that. So I think that's going to be kind of defining his career as a CFL commissioner. So if he does get that 10th team, it'll define it. So, Trey, what did you find interesting about the commissioner's address?
Just a quick note, first of all, if you didn't get a chance to watch the address going on, Josh Smith from 3 Down Nation has a great article up on their website that kind of recaps a lot of these talking points and what Ambrosi said there. But Trey, go for it.
There's a couple of things he touched on, but I guess the one the one I liked is talking about, how everything seems to go up and up. Toronto 40% up. It says ratings for Argo games increased nearly 15%. That's pretty huge, and especially when they had 25,000 for their East finals or something like that, on 28,000. Not too bad, for them, and of course increases in BC and Montreal, the 3 biggest markets, doing well. He didn't really talk about this, but I'm sure Winnipeg selling out the last 5 games is not, or 5 games this year is not too bad either, including a play. I don't remember too many playoff games being sold out over the last few years here, Ryan. It's usually pretty cold. That December one wasn't.
I feel like they normally are.
Are they? Because I always feel like it's pretty empty because everyone complains about going in the cold.
I think they mostly are sold out usually in Winnipeg. It just said not very many people. Some people just don't show up. But
yeah. Maybe that's true. Maybe
it was the same thing with Saskatchewan in 2019. Fair. Like we had it was a sellout, but it was West Final sell, but it wasn't just nobody showed up because it was cold.
No, that's fair. But this one was full. Probably the loudest game I've ever been to, everything. So I think that's pretty good for the league. And with a TV deal looming and American contracts coming up, that's a pretty good thing when the 3 biggest markets, which calculate 90% of the Canadian population, that's pretty a big deal.
Now, he mentioned a couple of things related to scheduling, and I think this is something we've all been talking about all season long that we would love to see, is that coming into next year when that schedule comes out, every team is going to play every other team at least twice, home and home. In there, we had a lot of cases this season where Bo didn't go back to Calgary with the Ticats. It was one of them. I think the Bombers and the Argos only played each other the once, right, and things like that. Yeah, next season they're going to give us what we wanted. You're going to get to see every team come into your stadium, and I think that's awesome. I think that's what we needed, and that is my biggest positive takeaway from what he's seen here, because there are so many interesting storylines that could happen there, and it's not like the NFL where, you can't play every team. You can make a schedule where you can play every team and play in your home and away series with them. He also talked about Saturday playoff games sticking around next season. They liked what they saw from those and seemingly the foreseeable future. And talked a little bit on the note of expansion that once they get that 10th team, they want to drop it back down to 19-week season. And perhaps that means getting to play the Grey Cup a little bit earlier in November even then as well. So I know we've had a lot of talk about the scheduling quirks we've seen so far. So what do you guys think about some of these things from Ambrosi, Trey?
Oh, thank God everybody's playing each other twice, home and home for one. And, nice. We have an offer for promotion. Anyway, sorry guys. But yeah, with the Grey Cup, possibly with 2 less weeks, plus that they still have that 30-day thing, right? That they could start the season earlier. I don't suggest starting the Grey Cup first week of October, but I mean, it definitely makes things a lot more flexible when it comes to that. And a point in the article we're talking about too, it was kind of weird having a game on Remembrance Day, and I know that's going to happen time to time. It's not exactly a holiday. right? It's a little different. It's not quite like the NFL playing on Christmas and stuff like that, or Thanksgiving. But yeah, I like the scheduling things, and I think we need to start seeing each team twice. You don't need to see the East teams playing each other 3 or 4 times anymore. They should be coming out everywhere. Adam?
No, I agree. I like the scheduling part as well. I like also, I got another question for you guys more than anything. Really, overall, what have you thought of Randy Ambrosie? He's been here now 6 years. He's indicated during his conference that he ain't going anywhere if the governors all kind of enjoy him. Overall, what are you guys thinking of Randy Ambrosie? I mean, the scheduling part I love. I mean, I want to see that. I like the Saturday playoffs. He's done well with that, I think, although they said ratings were down a little bit. But overall, in a kind of a 30,000 foot view, what do you think of Randy Ambrosie now? Kind of maybe, I know back in the day it was with the strikes and with other things, there was a little bit of kind of worry in the CFL. I think he's doing not a bad job anymore. It's a couple little things, always a little bit of hiccups here or there, but overall it was a pretty good year, I think. What do you guys think of Randy?
Yeah, it's hard for me to like some of the things, and I'll pivot to that in a moment and talk about the whole stats mishap of this season. Like things like that, are those on Ambrosie or is that on the board as a whole, right? Same thing with all of the talk from the negotiations where it was like, oh, he's not talking out there. It's like, how much of this is his decision versus he's just the face of the board of governors and he's the one that people draw their hate towards because of that, right? So I don't know. I have a hard time separating that. I think as a whole, the CFL administration, there are some positives like the ones we've talked about. There have also been some big negatives in the last couple of years, or initiatives they've been high on that have just fallen flat and kind of had clear ways they could have succeeded. So I don't know. I have mixed opinions, Trey.
No, I think he's in the middle, right? I wouldn't say he's the worst of all time by any means. And he definitely who was that guy? We had Jeffrey Ulrich or something for like a year of that. And then, but he's no Kohan. You know what I mean? He's no commish, right? He's somewhere in the middle. And even if you compare him to other commissioners right now, I mean, he's no Goodell. It'd be funny if we booed him like Bettman gets, kind of thing. He's no Dana White, but he gets stuff done as well as he can. And you're right. You can't blame everything on him for the stats, but that's what we tend to do. Right. So I don't know. Could be worse. I think we could definitely be worse off. And I think I get the vibe he cares. This isn't just a paycheck for him. Like, yeah, I'm sure he's paid well, but this isn't just a paycheck for him, right? He was a player back in the day, wasn't he? Yeah, he was. Yeah. And then he's passionate guy, Canadian. So I think he's doing all right.
Yeah, I think he wants the league to succeed, I think, is the first thing. And you look at the attendance, I think that could be maybe a kind of a feather in his cap that he kind of starting to solve the Toronto Argonaut issue or the BC Lions issues. He got new ownership in there. They're pretty stable. Same thing in Montreal now. They've got pretty stable ownership. The league has done pretty good lately, and it has been under Ambrosie's watch. So I'm going to give him a little bit better of a grade usually than what we had over the years for some of the other commissioners. I'll be honest, Mark Kohan didn't do a lot. He was just a very popular guy. Is what I always found. But like I said, everybody loved Kohan. Yeah. But in another way, you don't really need to love your commissioner. You just need him to make
your commissioner a good thing.
In all honesty, probably not.
Probably not.
They want the owners want what's best for themselves. Right. And he's got to kind of work that fine line between the league, what's best for the league, what's best for an owner, what's best for a player. He's kind of all in the middle of it. So really, if you don't like your commissioner, that's maybe not a bad thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, the CFL, all things considered, despite the stats debacle, had a great year in the stadiums for some of these teams and the TV numbers. Like, this has numbers-wise almost been one of the strongest years the CFL has had in the past decade. So that's encouraging after we got through the post-pandemic, the pandemic through seasons there. We got through, the CBA disputes and the threat to start the season due to that. We got through all that CFL, XFL merger talk, which is basically dead because now it's the USFL's turn. We're not going to get into that tonight. But for all the good things they've done, and for all the times people claim this league is Bush League, I don't think there's anything more Bush League than what I've seen with the stats system this year. Like the fact that they cut off the old system, said we're going to have the new system ready for the season, and end of year, it's still not a fully functional system. And at the State of the League address, the commissioner is coming out to go and say, yeah, we messed this up. And it was, his direct quote here in this 3 Down Nation article was, there was never going to be a good time to launch this significant transformation, and said it wasn't a viable option to run both systems at the same time. Like, as somebody who works in software development, that is absolutely the wrong way to do a software project. You do not just say, okay, yeah, I'm going to take down the old stuff, but this will be functional a year from now. Like, that just kind of cuts off all of your existing clientele, which is really the fans who got pretty upset with it. Now, they did add stuff in over time throughout the season. They tried to prioritize, once they had the debacle, getting in what the most important parts were, which was good to see. But yeah, that, as good as this season was, that to me was definitely an asterisk on this season of like, yeah, that was a debacle that should have never happened. And I don't know how it went this wrong. And as much as the commissioner says it was worth it because we're going to get better stats in the long run, I need to see what those stats packages look like to see if it was actually worth it. It was. I still can't believe. Hopefully the stats work for the Grey Cup. If the stats don't work for the championship game,
I mean, Ryan will literally go down to Ottawa or Toronto and grab Randy and drag him through the stats.
If the stats don't work, you guys are on your own for the Sunday night recap. I'm not showing up.
Fair enough.
It'll be our most successful show yet. The other thing that I think is a negative that came out of this review was that the football operations cap seems like it's here to stay. They talked about that the concerns over the expenditure there rising and wanting to limit that. What do you guys think? I think it hurts the league more than anything to keep that in place.
They must want it for some reason. I mean, is it to prevent like it's a Texas A&M? They fired their coach and they owe him $76 million. Still, like I mean, no CFL team's going to do that, right? Because tech college money is insane. But is that what they're trying to protect? Because coaches' contracts get paid out.
Well, Ambrosi did say he did say it's the fastest growing expense category in the league. It was creating a lot of tension with the Players Association because they saw how much the coaches were getting paid versus the players getting paid. But I see that from one side, but at the same time isn't also having the best talent in the league, which involves having the best coaching opportunities in the league, like lead to more revenue for the league and more revenue for the teams and the players in the long run.
It just tells me the Players Association is way more powerful than the coaching one. If they're, that's kind of what it tells me.
Which I don't think there is any coaches.
That's what I mean. Yeah, there probably isn't one. So no, I can. If you're going to put it that angle, yeah. But how many people are going to be like, oh, I'm going to the Bomber game for Coach O'Shea? No, they're going to the Bomber game because of Caleros, Lawler, Oliveira, Willie Jefferson's. I guess that's kind of the way they're heading, right?
The only thing I look at it though is if you have a Mike O'Shea in each of the teams. First of all, boy, do they got a lot of red-haired guys on the team. But secondly, you're going to have a lot better players and a lot better talent, and better talent means better plays, and better plays means more people in the crowd to watch those better plays. Yeah. So that's the way I look at the CFL coaches cap. I know that the players are probably jealous because they see Chris Jones taking in $750,000, $800,000, $900,000 or whatever he was getting from Saskatchewan before the cap. But yet you got to remember that those guys their jobs are dependent on the players. So the players seen that they don't get as much and they weren't happy about it. And I get it, but in another way, they're the guys making the money. So, and they're the guys that are trying to make the plays and make the better plays. So it's very tough to say which way this would work better. I don't think there should be a cap because again, you're losing talent to other places. You're rotating through coaches because you can't do anything else, or you're holding on to coaches which you shouldn't be holding on to because you have no choice. So they should make the cap more flexible, and then maybe you could stay. Otherwise, I think it needs to just go away.
Yeah, because there are ways you can do that, but then not have it in a sense where it's like a team can't fire their coach who clearly, they need a change, but they can't. Or they have to hire somebody to do both jobs because they can't fit it in. And then that guy doesn't do the job adequately. And then now what are you going to do? You fire him. Now you don't have the money to bring in 2 more guys. You got to promote from within, right? And so all of that, but on the players' side, I could see it as well if that is a concern financially for them. Like as we talk about, more talent, more fans, more money. That's a longer-term growth when the average football career is only a couple of years. So if I'm a player now, do I care that 10 years from now the revenue is going to be this high if I'm not going to be playing at that point and getting my cut of it? So
here's my other idea for you. Why not say that coaches' contracts aren't guaranteed? Let's face it, if they have a terrible season and they're going to get fired, they don't have to pay up the rest of the contract, and you keep the cap, but you go and you're allowed to fire a coach without guaranteeing a contract.
I wonder if there's some union, because every coach's contract in every league is. You know what I mean? Like I said, college, $76 million, NFLs are, hockey's are, everyone seems to be guaranteed, even in sports that aren't. So is there some form of union? Is there some legality we're not thinking of that? I don't know.
All right, well, let's move on to talking about the Grey Cup, and let's start talking through how the teams got here. We'll start off with the Montreal Alouettes, the East representative here, finishing their season off at 11-7. They knock off the Argos in the big upset there in the East final, and they're off to the Grey Cup. Going back to preseason, all 3 of us picked Montreal to finish last place in the East Division. Although, Trey, I know you did put a preseason bet on them as the Grey Cup champs, despite ranking them last in the East.
Oh, that's sitting juicy. It's gonna be so hard on Sunday.
So let's talk through it. I mean, we all had them as last place in the East coming into the year. What was the concern heading into the season? Adam, you got the Alouettes hat on currently. Why did you have them at the bottom preseason, and what's kind of changed over the season to get them here?
Well, there's a couple things. I think it was mostly the player talent at first because you suddenly heard that they were losing Trevor Harris to free agency because they didn't have no stable ownership. You knew all of a sudden that they were losing a guy like Eugene Lewis, who was gone at the beginning of the year. They lost Jake Weineke. They lost a bunch of players that they really shouldn't have at the beginning of the year because of unstable ownership. All of a sudden, the ownership stabilized to bring in Cody Fajardo, which I don't know. Honestly, I would really love to know the insides and outs of the Montreal office when they signed Cody Fajardo, if that was the guy they really wanted. But hey, it worked out for them. They brought in Jason Moss as their head coach. Again, everybody in Saskatchewan laughed and said, haha, they brought Moss and Fajardo. They must be desperate. Fools. And yeah, that didn't really work well. But you know what Montreal really had was some really good depth in receivers. They did break in Greg Ellingson, but didn't need to really. I mean, he wasn't much of a factor all season. But they gained guys. Austin Mack came out of nowhere for the beginning of the season, a little slower at the end of the year, maybe because of injury. But at the beginning of the year, Austin Mack was just hot. I mean, every week he was the guy that you picked in fantasy because he was the guy that you wanted. Guys like Speaker and Filippo came in later on in the season, had a very good season this end with it. And even in the East semifinal, Jake Hardy. When was the last time we talked about Jake Hardy on this show? Gets a touchdown and causes mayhem at the last 33 seconds with Chris Edwards over for the Hamilton Tiger Cats. But I think the biggest change, though, and when they were kind of just average, kind of right in the middle of the road, they were winning some games, they were losing some games, and all of a sudden they bring in the most outstanding defensive player from last year, Sean Lemon. That was a huge acquisition for the Alouettes. He's been absolutely terrorizing again this season after he came back. And then a bigger signing, I think, and the most important signing was Darnell Sankey. When Sankey came in, the Alouettes suddenly became one terrifying defense. So those are the two biggest signings, I think, and the biggest road when you look at it, when everything started changing. When Sankey walked in that door, everything felt like, okay, this team might be doing something here. They're at least going to go and try to fight against Toronto, and we'll see what happens. And hey, it's only one game in the East Final. It's not a best of 7. They ended up winning against Chad Kelly and the Argonauts, 9 interceptions, and that was the ticket that they needed to go back to Hamilton. Trey,
what about you? You were up and down, obviously, preseason, champs and the basement. So how did that your perception of them change throughout the year?
This perception from the beginning was all just that ownership and free agency fiasco, right? When they didn't even have an owner to do free agency, but apparently maybe teams should do that more often if it's going to get you to the Grey Cup, right? But yeah, it just was a slow process. But, an 18-game season, that's grueling in football, right? NFL is not even quite there. College is not there. These spring leagues aren't there. 18 games is a lot of time. And we always say it starts at Labor Day, right? And when did the Montreal Alouettes get hot? Right around Labor Day or just after, because since they I got some stats here for you. Since they added Darnell Sankey, they actually are 7-1 at that time, which I get. I didn't even realize that. Montreal was a good team, but everyone was so high on Toronto over the last couple months and this and that. Normally, would we not think a 7-1 team going into the playoff or going into the Grey Cup probably has a pretty good shot of winning, because Winnipeg's only 6-2 in their last 8. So, if you're going to keep records of lately, and Montreal's only loss was to Toronto, and Winnipeg lost to Saskatchewan. Where are they? And Hamilton, where are they? So if you want to look at that. So I really like Montreal and how they came. Sankey, Lemon, their defense is unreal. Fajardo, I want to see more out of, but I've been saying that for a while. That's my Montreal 2 cents.
Yeah, you mentioned that's interesting. Montreal 7-1 down the stretch.
7 in a row.
Yeah, I'm in that camp that I didn't realize that at the time either, right? Because all of the talk, all the talk was that Montreal is the second best team in the East and the 4th best team in the CFL. That's been the story all season long, right? And it hasn't been up for debate. And if you actually look back at their schedule this season, started the year 2-0 looking good. Then 3 straight losses because they played Winnipeg, BC, and Toronto all in a row. Then 4 straight wins. Then 4 straight losses because they played Winnipeg, BC, Toronto all in a row. Then they got finished playing the teams ahead of them in the standings, and they won everything the rest of the way. So this was a team that was they basically didn't trade wins and losses. It was up and down in longer stretches throughout the season. And I think you guys touched on those additions that were the biggest part. Yeah, being able to bring Sean Lemon and Darnell Sankey in mid-season is massive. Like we always talk about the NFL cuts, like who comes back, after Labor Day, kind of. I feel like we didn't get too many of those this year, but it was Lemon that was let go by the BC Lions after they signed him at training camp, and it was Sankey coming back from, I believe it was the XFL, that were massive additions for this team that was really carried by its defense all season long. And I think if coordinators could be nominees for Coach of the Year, I think you have to put Noel Thorpe in consideration because he has put together a masterful defensive team so far this year. He had some, they struggled in some games against those top tier teams, but when it mattered most last week against the Argos, they shut it down. They won that game and blew out the Argos, the best team in the CFL in the East Final. Not because the offense got anything done. It's because the defense forced 9 turnovers and scored 2 defensive touchdowns in there. So a great defense. I was in the middle on their defense preseason. The reason I had them ranked 4th was the wide receiver core. I think, like Adam talked about there, and some of the unknowns with the offensive game plan as well, based on all of that. But like Houston, you called out some of those guys that stepped up this season. They've got some good young pieces, and more than anything, I'm excited to see what the following years look like for this Alouettes squad, right? Because I don't know, are you bringing a guy like Ellingson back in next year if he didn't play much this year? No, you're probably going to try to roll with, Sneed, Speaker, Mac, like guys like that who have a bright future ahead of them in this league. So, yeah, dicey offseason left us all down on Montreal. It's been up and down all season. And now they're here in the dance, and kudos to them. They beat the teams they needed to get to where they are is the safest way to sum it up, right? They didn't win the games that were going to be tough for them to win necessarily, but they won the ones they absolutely needed to. Anything else on Montreal's trajectory to get here that you guys want to talk about, or should we flip over to the Bombers? You are...
I don't think there's much to say about the Montreal Montreal Alouettes. I mean, they turned it on when they needed to. They are a team of opportunity. They seem to win those games that they need to win and keep on going. So, yeah, look, like last weekend, to be honest, I mean, I think Rod Peterson went and said it there ain't no chance and pretty much a snowball's chance in heck that Montreal is going to win this game. And all of a sudden they did it. So good on them. Hope they carry it on, and we'll see what they do against the Bombers.
And I guess, just talking about the performance a little bit in that East final as well, because that was the big blocker that we knew they were going to hit for the past 6-7 weeks. We knew that it was going to come down to that game for them. The interception, the pick six by Marc-Antoine Dequoy early in the game, the Argos on the first drive driving to score in the red zone, pick six all the way back to the other end zone. I think that set the tone for the entire game. Now, the story came out today, I think John Hodge, 3 Down Nation, reporting it, that Chad Kelly actually suffered a concussion in the East final, which, maybe explains some of the performance in there, but that defense just did not let up from the get-go and put the offense in the position to go out and win that game. And kudos to them on that performance.
One quick thing also on that game there. We seen at the end of the game, Chad Kelly, I know he was upset about it, and I do got to bring it up. He didn't go shake hands with Cody Fajardo. He was upset, he said, and I don't want to – he was angry about it, so he didn't shake hands with anybody. You think that's appropriate, or do you guys think whatever, it's emotions or...
If he's got a concussion, I don't care anymore. Before that, I was a little like, whatever, but if he actually has a concussion and he needs to go seek some form of medical attention. Now, why was he playing for 3.5 or whenever long? That's another discussion. But if he knows something's not right, I have no problem with him leaving. We had this with Tom Brady. He lost too. And I'm not comparing Kelly to Brady by any means, but there was a couple of games Brady leaves the field early. I almost think it's cruel forcing the handshakes at some time. I get it that it's a gentleman thing to do, but I've lost some games at curling, and you got to shake the loser's hand. That you just, the lucky asshole that just keeps making these triple takeouts, and he's drunk as hell, and then you got to shake his hand after. Like, I don't know. I played slow pitch where there's guys you don't want to shake their hand. I get it. It's emotional. Should he have done it? Yes. If he's needing medical attention, get off the field, right?
Yeah, and he talked about in his interview today as well about how the reason he wasn't meant to be poor sportsmanship. It was just that he really was not feeling well from the after effects of the concussion, and he wasn't feeling well enough to basically go shake hands and chat with any of these guys. And I got to respect that there. I mean, it looks bad in the moment, but seeing that explanation, I think, explains why his play was so drastically different in that game. And why maybe he didn't want to stick around, shake hands after the game. And again, if it did happen in the first quarter, how does he play 3 more quarters like that? Especially when you could see something was off with him, right? I get that he's your star quarterback. He gives you the best chance to win the game, but he himself said, I feel like he said something like he didn't even really know what was going on with some of the play calls because it was all foggy. So like at that point, take yourself out of the game.
Well, man, that's tough.
I don't think you can't put it on him.
But I mean, sorry, the spot, everybody.
Yeah, well, the spotter should have taken him out. But how many times did Caleros get taken out this year from that spotter? At least a couple times. But of course, that's a regular season game. Can you imagine how mad that 40,000 or 35,000 would have been if Collaros got taken out last week.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a tough thing. I know it's a different sport, but I watch a lot of UFC, and they do the same thing. When a guy is not, he gets his bell rung, it's all on the ref and their decision, and you're going to get crap if you call it early, and you're going to get crap if you don't call it, right? And then in a big, high-tense situation. Now, I have a quick question. I know we don't want to drag on, and we'll maybe a little tease for what we talk about next year. Do you forgive his one game now, knowing, when we're thinking our preseason rankings next year, are you going to remember this game still, or are you going to kind of decide to wipe it off for him?
Chad Kelly's still the number one future quarterback in the CFL to me, and there's no question about it. I think he proved it this season.
Okay. So I'm not that crazy.
You know what? I never was a big, huge Chad Kelly fan, but he is a good quarterback. Very good quarterback indeed. And he did take a team to a 16-2 season. That's undeniable. So he is probably, you're right, still the number one quarterback in the league. Pretty well by far. I mean, there ain't anybody else that's really going to touch him. Maybe Jake Dolegala.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's what I was waiting for. Anyways, I was waiting to see if anybody was paying attention to what I'm saying. But no, honestly, this is one game. He had a concussion. He should have been pulled probably after that one big rock getting hit in the first quarter and been checked. But again, I don't know. That's weird.
I can't wait for our year recap show, because I'm just going to sit there when we talk about our preseason predictions. I'm going to love it.
Now, that being said, yes, that had an effect on the outcome of this game, but I don't think it's fair to I don't take that away from the Alouettes. I think even if Kelly's playing at his top game, with the defense playing as well as it did, Montreal won by 21. It's going to be a lot closer, but I still think they played very well in that game, enough that they probably would have gone on to win it, playing the way they did there. So Montreal absolutely deserves their spot in the Grey Cup, and a very impressive season for them, much better than I expected coming into the year. Let's flip it over and talk about the Winnipeg Blue Bombers side here. They go and finish first in the West Division at, what was their final record on the year? 14-4. They beat BC in the West final to go off to their fourth consecutive Grey Cup. Zach Collaros, what is he, the first quarterback ever to play in 4 consecutive Grey Cups, which is pretty insane. Preseason predictions for the West Division. Adam, you had Winnipeg at number 2. I had Winnipeg at number 1. Trey, famously, no better than 7-11 and 11. 4th place in the West.
It's coming next year. It's coming next year.
For the Bombers. Let's start with you here. You were really down on the team coming into this season. Why was that again? And kind of what changed over the... Are you surprised they ended up?
I'm so surprised. I thought they were going to be just 1 year too old. A lot of the key positions, like Collaros is 35, 36. He's, if Chad Kelly at 29 got rocked, Collaros has head injuries. The O-line is pretty old. The defense is pretty old. We got great guys like Jefferson, Jeff Coe, Big Hill, but, I just didn't see them doing it for another year. I wasn't sold on our kicker/punters. There's just a lot of things. You were up in the air about how much Lawler would actually play when, legal issues came along, which shown take regression, which statistics-wise he maybe did. Dembski's a year older. There was just a lot of factors, and I don't know if I've said this on the show, but I'm not a big fan of Collaros. So, there's just a lot going on with the team. And maybe it was a little bit of Mike's, our buddy Mike's reverse psychology. Or if I say they go 7-11 and then anything better than that, I'm happy as a Bomber fan. Because now I'm almost double worried for next year. And we got a whole offseason to talk about that. Because I'm like, again, now everybody I just said that I thought was too old this year is going to be even a year older. Yeah. I think I honestly just think I was just doing Mike's psychological games. I know all the Bombers watch our show. I know they're all like, screw that guy, we're gonna go and win, and so that's fine with me. Joke's on you guys. I'm a season ticket member.
I think that pretty much one of them definitely watches you, and can't wait to tackle you at your next outing there, Trey.
Oh, when I see Willie. He might not be there. He's not going to be back in time.
Anyways, let's face it. Yeah, I picked for the Bombers second, but who did I pick first again? I'm pretty sure I know. For preseason predictions. Yeah, go ahead, Ryan.
You picked the Calgary Stampeders.
Exactly. Where were they? Anyways,
at least I took
and I had the Riders in third, so I was even I was really smart. Anyways, the Bombers, I thought were going to be a pretty good team again this year. They're always going to be a good team. You just wonder how much they're going to keep up on the speed, because you're right, they are getting a little bit older. Zach Collaros is another year older. He's got he's always, again, I always say you got to watch with him, because he is one game away from being what Chad Kelly was in that East final, if you're not careful. That being said, though, they had one of the most dangerous receiving cores I've ever seen in this league. I mean, when you've got a guy like Kenny Lawler and, he's kind of expendable, we don't have to run him for 6 games. And by the way, we're still winning with everybody else. That is a deep defensive or offensive weaponry. Defensively, I mean, DeMario Houston at the beginning of the year was just picking off footballs like, I don't even know what to give you be analytic about it, but nevertheless, he was just picking off footballs like it was no tomorrow. And Winston Rose was having a good season, and Adam Bighill was Adam Bighill. Willie Jefferson looked like a man that went and found the fountain of youth.
I don't interrupt you, but all the guys I said that weren't going to be good, they were good this year. And it really clicked when Bighill did that third goal line stop a couple weeks ago. I was like, oh crap, he's not an investor, he's not a banker or whatever he is, he's still a football player, right? Like, and Jefferson too. I saw someone say, do you think that the defense was just told don't go crazy, and then now, because then they weren't lighting up the stats all year, and then they were all over Vernon Adams, right? So you wonder if they went some mind games on that.
And the other thing also with the Bombers that they did this year, they always were resilient. They always came back after a big loss. So, for example, Labor Day, they lose to the Saskatchewan Roughriders in kind of a heartbreaker in overtime. What do? They grab the Riders, crush their skull in, and then drag them back to Regina with a what kind of score? Don't even tell me, because I don't want to remember that game. Don't even look at
51-6 was the final score. I got it right in front of me.
Nevertheless, but they did that to other teams too. Again, they play. Was it Montreal or was it somebody else? No, they lost against Ottawa there, and then they went and crushed the skull of whatever team was in there the next week. I think it was Calgary.
Edmonton and BC back to back.
That's what I'm saying. It was one of those teams that if you actually happen to beat us, we're going to take our revenge out of the next team that goes down the road. So you know what? They didn't have a great game in the West Final against the BC Lions by any stretch, really. I mean, it's okay, but wasn't like anything really special. The only concern I have now with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, all year they've been very healthy. They've been very well. Not very many injuries. Dalton Schoen, Nick Dembski now. All of a sudden, Adam Bighill. There's all sorts of injuries coming on in the Winnipeg Blue Bombers at the end of this season. Even Zach Collaros, I don't know if he's 100%, but it's also the end of the year. You got to play through injury. It's the last game of the year. That being said, boy, it's going to be interesting to see what's on that field on Sunday in Hamilton.
Yeah, this team coming into the year, I was the one who ranked them the highest out of the three of us. I had them at first, and I do see what you were seeing, Trey, about, the team is getting older. We're going to see some regression. Like, Stanley Bryant's been the top offensive lineman in the league for years now, but he's getting up there in age, and we've seen some of that offensive line, slow down a little bit, and some of that defensive line at times slow down a little bit. I think the thing this team does really well, and is they've managed to keep the core together throughout this 4-year run to the Grey Cup, but they've also brought in the fresh new pieces to assist with that, whether they've lost guys to other teams, the NFL, just declining play or, age. They brought in new pieces, especially in the defensive backfield. I'll say this, and this was kind of confirmed in my head in the West Final. I think I have a new favorite player in the CFL, and it's probably not who you think it is. It's Evan Holm. Evan Holm is a CFL All-Star, was a CFL All-Star for the Bombers this year. I guess he's, a second-year player, so he wasn't a nominee for Rookie of the Year. If he was, I think he would have won the West. And I would almost make an argument that he should have been the Bombers Defensive Player of the Year nominee because he was so often in on the plays with clutch knockdowns, interceptions, huge plays in that West final. And that's a new piece that wasn't a starter last year, right? So they've had a number of those guys just step into the roster. Also, I don't know if we really saw this kind of outbreak from Brady Oliveira coming. We want to talk about this team being successful. It's the result of their running back putting up one of the top Canadian running back performances of all time.
Didn't he have like 100 in the first half or something stupid? Pretty close.
100 in the first half in the West final.
Yeah.
With the first drive, they got 75 yards, and he had all 75 in that game. So you want to talk about the weapons at wide receiver. I mean, nobody in the league had a rushing attack that was close to what Oliveira could bring in any given game, and that really propelled them to the next level and just proved that, they made the tough, but they made the right decision when they moved on from Andrew Harris to keep Oliveira here. Like, given how little Harris has played with the Argos over the last couple of years, can you imagine if they went the other direction and then Oliveira goes off to, I don't know, somewhere like Ottawa, for example? That it's decisions like that have kept the team together and I think have made it successful. And we talk about this, 4-year run. And the last time I think a run like that happened was Edmonton back in 82 or something like that. It's the first time the same quarterback has gone to 4 straight Grey Cups. Do you guys think it's harder or easier to do that now than it was back in the day? I think it's harder because so many guys change teams in the offseason. It's hard to keep the nucleus together like they've done.
Especially now with cap era and everything else. I mean, it's almost impossible. You see these teams, and you're right, in the last few years, back then it was 4-year deals, 3-year deals. Nowadays, 1-year deal, I want my shot at the NFL. Or 1-year deal, I'm going to go try to get more money next year. There is not a whole lot of really that time to build a team. And that's why we always say that you can go and do like Montreal just did and bring a team out of almost nowhere and end up competing for a Grey Cup, because you get hot and you get a good team together like the Alouettes have, they can end up in the Grey Cup. But Winnipeg's done a beautiful job. And man, I'm so sick of hearing the words that the Winnipeg Blue Bombers aren't a dynasty. I'm a Rider fan, and I'll admit they're a dynasty already. If they played in that COVID year when there was no football, they were Grey Cup contenders, no question at all. Would they have kept it together this long? Maybe not. Maybe it still would have been only 4 years. But to me, 5 years of very, very solid football where you're the number one team in the West, pretty much unquestioned, a little bit by BC this year. You're an amazing team, and you go to the Grey Cup that much. You brought a quarterback from obscurity and probably thought his career was over to being an MVP for 3 years. You've had so many offensive linemen besides Stanley Bryant that have been just absolute all-stars for how many times. This is a dynasty. There's no question about it. And like I said, it's very tough to do it in this time. In these times, you got coaches caps, you got salary caps. They got everything against you. And yet Winnipeg, credit to Kyle Walters. He's done an amazing job of bringing this all together and keeping it going.
And the crazy thing is, with the storied history of this franchise, there's legitimate talk around this town that Mike O'Shea is the best coach in Bombers history. I have seen some legitimate talk as well that is Zach Collaros the best player in Bombers history. And I think there's more competition in that one, but it's hard to deny the success he has had as the quarterback there. You were saying it's harder in this era too, Trey?
Oh, a million times. And salary cap is one thing, but the whole debate, I always hate the debate between the eras, the whole MJ versus LeBron kind of thing. You can't make those comparisons. You can't.
Yeah.
Gretzky versus McDavid. McDavid would probably kill Gretzky. Was Gretzky one of the greatest of all time? 1,000,000%. But you can't compare them. The only thing I can compare the Bombers to is in what sport do we actually see the same team make it all the time anymore, minus Tom Brady? You know what I mean? What team do we see make it all the time? It always seems to be different teams in NHL. Always seems to be somewhat different teams in baseball. What does it say? Who makes it all the time? Do we see these dynasties in sports anymore? We don't.
I think in the NHL we've been close. Like the Lightning would have been the most recent one. Chicago in the 2010 area.
But it still seems only be two or 3 years, and then it kind of disappears, right? Like there's a debate in the NFL with Kansas City. They've made 3 out of the 4 last Super Bowls, have won 2, and the only one they've lost was to Tom Brady, right? So. I think you can, even if the Bombers lose, you can consider this a modern day dynasty. Would I compare it? Is it fair to compare it to Edmonton in the 80s? No, because it's 2 different eras, but I think you can say it is now.
I also don't know if it's fair to compare it to dynasties in other leagues as well, right? Like a 30-team league, getting to the finals 4 straight times is a lot different than a league where
you still got to win.
6 of the 9 teams make it.
You still got to win. You still got to win. And Bombers didn't make it for 30 years.
That's true. Yeah.
So that's what I think you can completely compare it to different leagues because, sure, hey, half the teams make to the Stanley Cup playoffs, and 6 out of 9 still make it to the CFL playoffs. Now in basketball, 20 out of the 30 teams make the playoffs. It's about the same ratio. So I mean, I think you can almost do it in some sports.
Now, we've talked a lot about the high points for the Bombers this year. They did have some struggles at times, mostly on the road, right? The tail of the season for the Bombers this year was they smashed teams at home. The only game I think they lost at home was that 30-6 game against BC back in week number 3. Luckily, I skipped that one. So maybe that was my fault. I had another commitment, so I didn't have to sit through that. But at home, they were just absolutely dominant all the way. But on the road, they struggled, whether it was a low-scoring tight win, whether it was that game in Edmonton where they fell behind 21 points and came back, whether it was, losing in overtime. They also had their fair share of losing to third-string quarterbacks this season, right? It always seems like they're the ones that find a way to kill this team. So, strong year for the team once again, and they are definitely the best of the West, but not a team that didn't have its flaws at times throughout the season also.
Yep. If I talk about it, it's going to be an hour, so Adam, you just go and I'll say ditto.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think that the Bombers had their faults. I mean, I think they were a lot cleaner than they were last year. Last year, that was a error-filled team that somehow managed to get a lot of victories. I mean, don't get me wrong, good teams find a way to win. So I agree with that. But this year, yeah, they were a little cleaner. You're right on the road. And with third-string quarterbacks, they had trouble for some reason. I don't get that one because, Dustin Crum comes in, they lose. Jake Dolegala comes in, they lost.
Taylor Powell.
Taylor Powell, they lost. I mean, it was strange.
Cameron Dukes backup, but they almost lost.
Almost lost that one. As I said, so unless Cody Fajardo and Caleb Evans gets hurt and the third string comes in, Winnipeg, you may have a chance.
Davis Alexander, Grey Cup MVP.
Exactly. I wonder what the betting line is on that one. Trey?
Yeah, that's got to be a high betting line there for sure. This is a team up and down season, but you're right. More than last year, the games they won for the most part, they won handily, and they won. It wasn't a sloppy get it done, at least at home. But nonetheless, they managed to win the games they needed to as well to find their way into the Grey Cup to face the Montreal Alouettes. Let's get into talking about the matchup itself. The first time in the history of the league, we're talking about Grey Cup 110. This is the first time ever the Bombers have faced the Alouettes in the Grey Cup, most likely due to them being in the same division for many years and that not being possible.
Not being around.
And that as well. But kind of cool to get this matchup for the first time ever. I know we talked about ideal matchups a couple of weeks ago. I forget, where does this one rank for you guys?
I think I put it up there just because of my bet. I think I just put it up there because it's my team versus the team I bet on. But I can't remember.
Honestly, I like it, but I mean, I predicted it also because I wanted to see maximum chaos. So, namely, in a certain province.
If there's going to be if there's one quarterback that deserves to beat Winnipeg, it's going to be Fajardo, right? So.
I wonder what the prop bet is on him hitting it upright. I really would love to see that.
Oh, let's see. There's got to be one on FanDuel. Nope, not right now.
The ball's dead if it hits the upright, right? On a pass, I think it is. Because otherwise, could you imagine if, the heroic effort, he pings it off the upright into the receiver's hands to win?
That Hail Mary like Adams did, but off the upright? That would be wild.
Maybe they'll win on a kick off the upright or something like that. So the Bombers open this game as 8.5-point favorites. Not quite the amount Toronto had over them. The over-under is 47.5. We'll get into picks and predictions later on, and we'll do our positional matchup breakdown here as well. But outside of what we've discussed of these two teams on their way, their seasons to get them here, what to you guys are the big storylines of this matchup itself? What catches your eye, Adam?
Well, I mean, I'm in the province where they're looking at only one thing and one thing alone. It is that Cody Fajardo and Jason Moss both are in the Grey Cup. They're looking at Zach Collaros in the Grey Cup. They're looking at Nick Dembski in the Grey Cup. They're looking at Patrick Neufeld in the Grey Cup. They're looking at a few others in the Grey Cup. Jake Hardy's in the Grey Cup. Oh, and by the way, these are all guys that Jeremy O'Day got rid of. That's what Saskatchewan's looking at right now, with green-tinted envy in all their faces. Probably bitter, not a bit bitter, I'm sure. Thinking this should have been us. This should have been us. And yeah, no, it wasn't. So, you know what? Honestly, that's the biggest storyline in Saskatchewan. I'll tell you that much right now. They're going to be talking about if Fajardo wins a Grey Cup. They won't even mention Montreal. They'll literally say Cody Fajardo won a Grey Cup if it happens. But yeah, that's pretty much what I think. And I don't know. I think Saskatchewan might actually be cheering a little bit for Montreal because the saying ABW has been going around a lot lately in Saskatchewan from what I've heard. Anybody but Winnipeg. So yeah, it's a divided province at the moment. Trey, what's the storyline in Winnipeg?
I don't know about Winnipeg because Winnipeg seems to have the parade planned already, but I'm going to say a couple of reasons why I wouldn't do it right now. So either of you guys, a little Q&A here, a little trivia night. Over the last 10 Grey Cups, what do you think the record is for the team that has the better record?
3-7.
Okay, you're right. They're 5-5, but still not as what you think it should be, right? You would think that the team with the better record should win, and actually, the better team has scored 265 points versus the other team 258, making an average of 26.5 points versus 25.8 points. So you can throw that 8.5 line out because it means absolutely nothing in the Grey Cup, right? These teams are 0-0. It doesn't matter. We've had an 8-9-1 team beat a 15-2-1 team. We've had a 9-9 team beat a 13-4-1 team over the last few years. We've had the Bombers at 11-7 win. I think the thing to 9-9, Toronto beat Calgary a couple of times. Actually, I think
it would help if Calgary didn't choke all the time in the Grey Cup.
That's fair, but Winnipeg did once, Hamilton did once, Calgary a couple times. This game, it doesn't matter, and the one beautiful thing about the game, when 6 teams make it, you do get a 9-9 team. You do get a 10-8 team who in other leagues and other sports wouldn't deserve to be here, right? So I think we got to throw all that out. Historically, Montreal 7 for 11 in Grey Cups, Winnipeg 12-15. So percentage-wise, they're about the same. They've never met, like we've talked about. And one fact too, I never do this, but I'm gonna take something Mike says and I'm gonna use it for my benefit. He says it's really tough to beat the same team 3 or 4 times in a season, and I know Ryan, you don't agree with that. But Cody Fajardo is 0-9 against Zach Collaros. There's no way he's losing a 10. There's no way he's losing a 10. 100% Cody Fajardo's got the dartboard with Zach Collaros' face in the middle. It's gotta be. And that's kind of what I'm looking at is everything that Montreal did right last week, where we were saying, oh, everything has to go right for Montreal. They gotta let it ride, and hopefully they can do it again.
I don't think he should have Collaros on the dartboard because he has Collaros to thank for him being a starting quarterback in the CFL right now. If Collaros doesn't go down, Fajardo never gets that chance to start in Saskatchewan and eventually go over to Montreal and play in the Grey Cup, right? So
maybe Fajardo would have had the Collaros career in Winnipeg.
You never know.
Yeah. Well, we're getting into multiverse crap now, man.
Save it for the offseason, the CFL multiverse.
Either that or, Fajardo doesn't have him maybe in his targets, Collaros, but he probably has him between the two uprights. Hasn't hit him yet.
There's going to be a close one. There's going to be one where they'll even photo review it to see if it hit or something.
Yeah, talking about the season series between these teams, and tough to beat the same team multiple times. 2 games between them. The Bombers won on July 1st, 17-3. I think there was a very bad weather game, that one as well, in Montreal. There was big rain delay on that one. And then back on August 24th, the Bombers beating the Alouettes 47-17. I believe that one started off with 2 Alouettes defensive touchdowns early in that game, and then they go over, and then the Bombers just got it under control and put the points on the board in that one there. The big story for me, you mentioned, I'm glad you mentioned the struggles of the top team in the CFL or the favorites in the Grey Cup over the last number of years, because it's really on the Winnipeg side, it's what version are we getting of this team in the Grey Cup? Are we getting the 2019 Grey Cup performance where they throttled the Ticats? Or are we getting, 2021, they didn't look good at times in that one, and then they came back, and it was a weird game with so much wind going on there. 2022 Grey Cup, not the best performance, and it comes down to the wire against the Argos in that one. So, they've had up and down so far in the Grey Cup. So what version are we going to see in this game? Because Winnipeg as a team, I think if they're on their game, it's going to be tough for Montreal to beat them. It was tough to beat Toronto as well, to be fair. But if they're not on their game, well, then Montreal's a team that's proven they can take advantage of somebody not being on their game. So I think, to me, the biggest X factor in this game is what version of Winnipeg shows up. Right?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if you get a Winnipeg Blue Bomber team that can run all over the football field, Brady Oliveira has done that, but he's got a little bit more of a challenge this week. Again, Sean Lemon's there now, and Darnell Sankey they can bring in to plug some holes. This isn't going to be a very easy for Brady Oliveira to try to bust some holes open. That offensive line needs to give him some help, and we're going to have to go and see what happens here. But that's probably the biggest thing I'm looking at in this, to see what Winnipeg team shows up. If it's the Winnipeg team that can break holes for Brady Oliveira, it should be a fairly straightforward victory for the Bombers.
So what does each team need to do to win this game? We talked about it a little last week in those matchups, more so from the standpoint of the underdog. But for both teams in this matchup, what's the main thing they need to do in this one? What do you think, Trey?
For Winnipeg, same thing I think I said last week. You just gotta ride Oliveira, and you can't force it to be a game where, I'm looking at the weather real quick. It says high of 6, so it's not exactly going to be a cold one on, in southern Ontario, but you still don't want to rely on the passing game in mid-November, right? And we've seen what Collaros can do in November games. How many picks did he throw to Saskatchewan? I'm still never going to forget that, right? And if it turns into one of those games where you need to throw points, you can't. I don't think you can rely on Collaros to always do that all the time anymore. And for Montreal, they got to do something to counteract it, because we all were talking about BC either need a run game or need to outthrow, like to throw enough to be the equal to it. And I think that's what Montreal needs to do. They either need to get stand back and say stand back better be eating Wheaties every day and, running the ball down the throats, get Phil Pott involved, get everyone involved in that offense. And yeah, we've said it's either going to probably be a Winnipeg blowout or it's going to be close, right? And if Oliveira's marching down the field, putting up 6 or getting field goals for the Bombers all the time, Montreal's got to do something back, right? And keep it up. Adam?
Yeah, well, I said before about Brady Oliveira needs to have a good game, and the Bombers need to push open holes on a very strong Montreal defense. I think on the other side of the football, you nailed it on the head, Trey. We haven't seen a whole lot out of William Stanback yet this playoff, and we need to see more out of him if the Montreal Alouettes are going to have any real success. They can be ball hawks, and Zach Collaros knows about this. That second game that you mentioned there, Trey or Ryan, I think Collaros threw 2 straight interceptions, and then all of a sudden, I don't know if something kicked in upstairs or what happened, but all of a sudden he was perfect. And maybe it was just because he was making short plays over to Schoen or to anybody on that. It was Wolokarski or to whoever on Winnipeg side. All of a sudden, everything was working. So they need to rely on the short ball. I think Winnipeg it's one of those things where you take whatever Montreal is going to give you. And if I'm Winnipeg, I'd be a little bit more aggressive also on the defensive side of the football. You look at Richie Hall's defense, it's mostly bend, don't break. Trey just loves it, I know. But if I was Richie Hall, send Willie and Jeff Cote on for a run. See what happens and see if you can get some real pressure on Fajardo. Fajardo doesn't really work great under pressure. He's not as mobile as he quite used to be at one time when he was in Saskatchewan. So I think you have an opportunity there. Get Fajardo frustrated, get Moss smashing the Gatorade jugs, and get some pressure on Fajardo.
Yeah, if you can put up 10 sacks on VA in that Lions offensive line last week, do whatever you did to Montreal, who struggled to keep Fajardo upright this year, because he's going to force those errors if that happens. For Winnipeg, the biggest key to me is play smart football, hold on to the ball. Zach Collaros didn't light it up last week. He put up 158 passing yards, 14 of 21. But he had 0 turnovers, and that was the biggest key. He played smart football offensively in that game. And I even saw him slide feet first on a play instead of trying to dive for extra yardage or instead of trying to, throw the ball into coverage there, which is something he struggles with sometimes when the pressure's on him. So I think play that smart football, take Montreal's defensive turnovers out of it, is going to be the biggest key. And like we've all said, leaning on Oliveira is a large part of that, because as good as Montreal's pass defense is, their rushing defense isn't as good. I think you can exploit them a little bit using Oliveira, Dembski, Rashid Bailey, etc., mixing them all into the run game there. This is the biggest key on the Winnipeg side. On the Montreal side, I think the biggest key here, and I said this earlier this week, and I'm going to stand by this, I think Montreal needs their defense or special teams to score at least 1 touchdown in this game to keep them in it. I think this is a team that offensively this year just has not done anything exciting. Even despite the 9 turnovers last week, they put up, 197 yards of offense only, and 2 offensive touchdowns against the Argos' terrible pass defense. The offense has to be better. It has to get something going in that game, where the defense is going to need to step up and like they have all year long and score some points like they did in that second matchup against Winnipeg. I think the biggest key there. So let's get into the positional matchup breakdowns here quickly. We'll start off on the offensive side of the ball. Who wants to go first here? Who do you give the edge to on offense? I think you know what direction I'm leaning, but Trey?
Winnipeg. I think, I have to give it to Winnipeg because I hate to say it, but Collaros is a little bit better of a quarterback. They got a little better receiving core, which I don't hate to say that. The receiving core in Winnipeg is better. It's I got to give Winnipeg. Adam?
Can we record that little bit there for the segment for the episode when we go and do the old breakaways? That way there we can have Trey going and say Collaros is better.
Oh yeah,
Anyways.
by the end of year recap episode is having like a 5-minute montage of all of Trey's thoughts on Zach Collaros throughout the season.
And then when I admitted home field matters.
Oh yeah, that clip's going in there for sure.
I just saw that. Got to find the pizza episode. I was just thinking about that, so I'm glad we brought up this episode. But anyway,
That reminded me you've never cashed in on your conditional from our fantasy football trade yet this year.
I never forget.
All right, it's still valid at any point. Anyways, Adam, what about you for offense?
Offense, I'm going to give it to the Bombers. I mean, they've got the better offensive line. They've got the better running back right now in Brady Oliveira. And that hurts for me because I usually don't like picking Brady Oliveira. But
you had Greg McRae as one of your top running backs in the CFL preseason.
Darn right, and I'll stick to it. Anyways.
Oliveira didn't make the list.
No, Oliveira didn't. Nevertheless.
He saves dogs, man. He saves stray dogs. I feel like my girlfriend knows him. He pops up on her Instagram. Like he's everywhere, man. He's like
kudos to the saving dog part, but Greg McRae, if they could play an American, I still say Greg McRae would be a better running back. Anyways, I'm just being evil now, and the guy's like probably going to win the MOP this week. Anyways, no, they got the better offensive line, they got the better running backs, they got the better quarterback, I think, right now, and questionable on the receivers now because of the injuries. I'll say maybe Montreal's maybe a little better on the receiving core just because they're like not as banged up. But gee, that was a deep receiving core also. So I'm going to edge to Winnipeg for sure.
Yeah, I got to give the edge to Winnipeg. They're basically top two in almost every offensive category, whereas Montreal, offensive touchdowns, 9th in the league, 7th in the league, offensive points, 6th in net offense, 7th in first downs, 5th in rushing yards, 6th in passing yards. So, bottom half of the league in every offensive category. And that's why I make that statement I made earlier that their defense has to, put some points on the board because the offense just hasn't been exciting all year long. They've got the pieces. They just don't connect. And even if they're moving the ball down the field, they're not putting the ball in the end zone as much as they should. So I advantage Winnipeg on offense here. Here's an interesting one, though. The defensive side of the ball, what do we think about the matchup there, Adam?
I'm going to go and advantage Montreal. The defensive line, I think with two guys in there, I think they give a little more. I'll say actually Winnipeg on defensive line gets the advantage because you got two guys who can really get after the quarterback. But then the defensive secondary and then the linebacking core, Darnell Sankey is a beast. That guy there is dangerous anytime you're after it. Sean Lemon, I know he's in the line, but he's still dangerous as well. And Montreal can pick off footballs and run them back. They're athletes. I think that probably that way I'll say the secondary is probably a little better than Winnipeg's. And I'm going to go with Montreal for the advantage on this one. Trey?
Oh, double down, Montreal. Got to give it to Montreal. If I see one wide open pass with the Blue Bombers defense, I'm going to throw up again. I think, and you make a valid point. Football, sometimes time off isn't the end of the world. Sankey's played a lot between the XFL and stuff, but he's also only played 7-8 games this season. He's not as banged up, right? Sean Lemon didn't play as much, right? These guys had some later starts, and it could be a lot of health too. There was a lot of injuries on that Blue Bomber defense too. It looked like Jeff Coate and Big Hill were kind of limited. A couple other guys I thought I saw, right? So I think Montreal might be winning the health game right now, and that's a little part of why I lean towards them.
Yeah, I looked at the injury report earlier. Everybody on Montreal was a full participant in practice, whereas Winnipeg, Big Hill, Schoen, etc., did not practice. And I don't know whether Big Hill will play. It wouldn't surprise me if he plays. But how effective is he going to be after it looked like, an ACL injury or something like that? It looked bad. when he got injured in the West Final. I think this is close. These are two of the best defenses in the CFL. And it actually surprises me to look at the stats and see the Bombers gave up the least points to opponents this season. They averaged, offenses averaged 18.2 points against them. They gave up 27 offensive touchdowns on the season in an 18-game season's not bad. That's like 1.5 touchdowns offenses were putting up on them a game. I will give the slight nod to Montreal, especially with Big Hill being injured, because I think he's a huge force in the middle of that defense. But I think this is a very close matchup on the D side of it. Special teams wise, I'll go first on this one. Special teams is hard because I give the edge to Winnipeg in the kicking game because Sergio Castillo has been pretty good all season long. I know he hit the upright this past week, but this is a guy that should have been the Grey Cup MVP in 2021, and I feel like he got robbed of that. But I think he's the better kicker. That being said, in the return game, Janarian Grant has struggled maybe a little since returning from injury to break a big one. And James Letcher Jr. has 3 return touchdowns in his last 4 games for the Alouettes since taking over that role. So we're going to talk about alternative points to offenses, putting them on the board. They can get a return touchdown, especially early in the game. That can very well turn the tide in Montreal's favor here. Adam, what do you think?
It's a kind of almost a tie for me, although it does change a little bit when you look at the field goals percentages. Sergio Castillo was 90%. David Cote was 75%. That's a pretty big sign that you should pick the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Janarian Grant, I think, is probably the better returner because right now Chandler Worthy is still injured, I believe, for the Montreal Alouettes. So I think that probably that's still also an advantage for Winnipeg. That being said, the special teams, Mike O'Shea always has some weird things going on, but Montreal also has just one entry with the 1-yard onside kick. So
that should be a prop. I feel like that should be a prop bet. That's right. Like does the onside punt happen?
Without a doubt, that has to be one. But I'm going to probably go advantage Winnipeg in this one. I don't really like to, but I think that probably they got the better return game right now. They have the better kick game. I don't know if they have the better punt game, but punting is one thing that I think you could probably look over if the other two are good. Trey?
Give me Montreal. I know the kicking is not as great, and I can see that, but 90 to 70s or 75 is a big drop off, but 90 ain't no Hall of Fame season either. And the kick return game, I mean, I know he's been hurt, but I haven't been impressed with the Blue Bombers return game for most of the year. And even when Janarian Grant returned, it still seemed like it kind of comes back to what Ryan said earlier. Which version are we going to get? If we're going to get the Janarian Grant, from last year or the couple of years before, who can return it at will, sure, he's probably better. But I think Montreal. I'm going to go with Montreal. Is that Mike's burner account, the MBHA ball hockey? That's got to be Mike's burner account, isn't it? Like,
absolutely.
Well, welcome into the chat, whether you're Mike or not. We got a couple folks in the chat here tonight. Good to see you. We've been reading the comments as we go along. Yeah, the 13th one from Andre here as well. The 13th Grey Cup for Winnipeg after a 13-year absence at the Grey Cup for Montreal. So a bit poetic there. And
13 means it's your turn to go and get field goal against you at the last second, Montreal. I'm sorry.
13 happens to be Adam's favorite number, so it all lines up. All right, coaching. Let's talk coaching here. Which team do you give the edge to? The long-term coach in Mike O'Shea or first-year head coach over in Montreal in Jason Maas and the units there? Adam, what do you think coaching-wise?
Do it.
If I was coaching the Gatorade jugs and how to break them, Jason Maas is a hands-down winner. I don't know. I never was a fan of Jason Maas's offensive schemes. That being said, Mike O'Shea is pretty much a legend now. Honestly, I would almost debate him to be one of the best for coaches in the league ever. He's a very good coach, and I hate to say it, but he is. I mean, honestly, there hasn't been very many coaches quite like him. I mean, maybe Matthews back in the day, maybe Wally. That's pretty much, he's in elite company at this point. So coaching, without a doubt, this one's Mike O'Shea's. So Winnipeg.
Trey?
Yeah, I go to Osh. I can't even lie and do a character and give it to Jason Moss. It's Osh. To me, you know, we're talking about before. I know I didn't grow up in the Bud Grant era and some of those other coaches, but you know, he's catching up in wins. He's catching up in almost everything. You can't imagine there's been many coaches to go 4 straight Grey Cups either in a 110-year history, right? So he's got to be up there.
Is he a comment? First of all, I'm going Winnipeg as well. Mike O'Shea there as well. Though Montreal does have some good coaches. Like I said, I do really like what Noel Thorpe has done this year. There's a question in the chat about taking Montreal's return game over Winnipeg's. Yes, Janarian Grant is a stud, but also James Letcher Jr. I mean, 3 return touchdowns in 4 games. Definitely the hot hand right now. And I wouldn't be entirely surprised if he actually returned one for a touchdown in this game. All right, we've gone through the storylines. We've gone through the journeys to get to this game. We've talked about the positional matchups, how these teams are going to win the game. Now the question is, who are we picking to win? Let's get to our Grey Cup picks. Moneyline against the spread, the over-under. Let me put the odds back up on the screen here on the video podcast. Bombers minus 8.5. Over-under is 47.5. Resident betting expert Trey for the final time this year. What are you taking?
I think you have to take the plus 8.5 with Montreal. Even if you think Winnipeg's going to win this game, I think there's too many injuries on Winnipeg. I think, you know, Grey Cups have relatively been closer historically. I'm taking Montreal plus 8.5. And, you know, I'm getting vibes of this game's going to turn out like the 2019 West Final almost, and it's going to be a touchdown-ish kind of game. It's going to come down. I know we've been joking about the uprights, but it's going to come down to like a situation like that. Fajardo always seems to play the Bombers that way. Yes, he's 0-9 against them, but he has or against Caleros anyway. By a lot of games, he's put the fear of God into them to the last second. Over under 47.5. That's a plus 6 day. Let's go over for now, and I'll likely switch that once I find out it's going to snow. Adam, what do you got, man?
Well, first of all, if there was any sign that NBHA ball hockey is not Mike, I mean, you know, 42-13 for the Bombers, eh? So, yeah, okay. Anyways, I'm now having to put 2 years in a row now. I haven't made a wrong prediction in a playoff game. So this one here is going to be kind of a big one for me. I'm going to go, and I'm going to take the Montreal Alouettes in this one, plus 8.5. I'm taking an outright win as well, because you know what? Momentum's a finicky thing. Winnipeg looked good. They had a big defensive game against the BC Lions last week. Brady Oliveira did run the football. That being said, the weapons aren't there like they used to be for the Bombers. Adam Big Hill is, I'll say 50-50 probably to play, I would think. Great guys from what you're hearing. Probably, maybe.
I could see it going either way, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Probably Nick Dembski, I would think, would be the same thing. I don't see Dembski really missing it. I'll say more 75-25 he does play. Dalton Schoen, I say, is out. I don't see nothing coming to that. So the Bombers are banged up pretty badly, which they've never dealt with injury really all season. The Montreal Alouettes are a little bit healthier. They just had a huge win over a team that they couldn't beat all season that they just beat. They've got to beat another one, which is tough, and it's going to be a loud crowd. I think Montreal is going to be probably a little bit more loved by the Hamilton faithful because, you know, it's not Winnipeg. That being said, yeah, it's good to me. It's Montreal Alouettes. They're going to win this one outright. The game is probably going to be a close one. I don't think this is going to be a defensive battle if Montreal is going to win it. So that means unless they all of a sudden get 30 points on defense, I don't see this making over 47.5. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking right now. Give me the Alouettes, and 47.5 under.
Well, before I give my pick, in case you're wondering what Mike, our good co-host Michael Garrell, who couldn't be here tonight, is taking, your guess is as good as mine, because 4 days ago, he texted me and said that the Bombers are going to win this by a blowout, but when he couldn't make it tonight, he said, by the way, my pick is Montreal to win outright. So I have no idea. Ask him when kickoff starts on Sunday, because it'll probably change 5 times before then. I am going to do it. I am taking the Bombers to win and cover the spread of 8.5 in this game. I'm starting to look at it of like, I've said this. I think this game goes 2 possible different ways. If Montreal's going to win this, it's going to be a tight, low-scoring game because their defense has managed to completely shut Winnipeg down, and they've maybe gotten defensive touchdown or 2. If Winnipeg plays Winnipeg football, I think they run the ball down the Alouettes' throat. I don't think Montreal's offense can put a ton up on the board. So I think, if Winnipeg wins, they're probably covering that spread. And I think Winnipeg's going to be ready to play. I think they came out firing in that West Final really well. I think they get it done this week. So I'm going to take the Bombers to cover the 8.5 points. 47.5 line is interesting because, I think the Bombers are going to fire well, but then Montreal's not putting a ton of points on the board. That could still hit the under. I think I would bet the under here because if my prediction of the Bombers running away with this is wrong, I think Montreal, it's a greater chance either my prediction's right and they still hit the under, or I'm wrong and probably hit the under. So I would take the greater chance on that. But I'm taking the Bombers to throttle the Montreal Alouettes in this Grey Cup matchup because defense forced 9 turnovers, scored as many points as they did last week against Toronto. They're a really good defense, but I don't know if they can do that 2 weeks in a row.
You want to give some score predictions since we have some in the comments?
Oh, I'm never good at these score predictions.
It's Grey Cup, though. You got to do it. I'm sure someone's going to have the fundraising tickets where you got the scores and stuff, so we got to do it.
Give me like 27-15 Bombers. Yeah, write these down.
15. Winnipeg, that's Ryan. Adam, you took Montreal to outright win, correct? So what do you got?
Yeah, 28-27 Montreal.
Ooh.
Anybody want to look up that score? You'll know why.
Does it involve the number 13, your favorite number?
It might involve Glenn Johnson. That's right.
Well, I just said Montreal plus 8.5. I didn't say yet who I think's going to win, though.
Oh. Do we want to keep that as tune in next week to find out? No, just kidding.
Yeah, tune in next week. I'll tell you Sunday after.
Yeah, I'll tell you Sunday after.
I think it's going to be 31-27, which gives me the over. Right? Yeah, it gives me the over. 4. Let me see. Can you see it?
Oh, hang on. Wait. How do I solo layout? There we go.
For the Alouette, Jean de Alouette. Here we go. Take Montreal.
All right.
So and Mike has 3 picks? He took Winnipeg the blowout, and then Montreal.
And Montreal to win outright. I did not get score predictions from Mike, but
and then the second one or the third one is that the referees win. That way he's got all base.
Andre Prue's not out there, so the referees lose.
Yeah. 100%.
How is Andre Proulx not out there for a Montreal game? How not?
He should just be the Grey Cup guy. Don't see him all year. Grey Cup. And Labor Day. That's it. Labor Day, Badger Bowl, Grey Cup.
Yeah, and once he retires, can we at least bring him back for the big games, please?
Yeah.
I think that's the way to do it.
Who is the referee this year? Did they have it down?
I just saw the guy's name. It was a 3-down article.
Tim Croker, maybe?
Tim Croker, yeah, that was the one. Yeah.
So a Saskatchewan referee to manage the quarterbacks formerly from Saskatchewan.
It's perfect. Were there any other fun prop bets you wanted to quickly talk about, Trey, or did you find
the only
any
thing I
cool
can
ones?
find on FanDuel is the normal passing yards, spreads, stuff like that. So, maybe we'll leave that to the Discord. I'll throw some things up over the next few days, and join the Discord if you want to turn into a degenerate like me. So there you go. But don't bet the farm. That's it.
Yeah, only
Never
bet the
bet
ant farm.
Only the ant farm.
Oh, remind me to put that in the clips show at the end of the year. The origin of us discussing how much an ant farm costs and how you can bet those. All the memories.
The pizza, the ant farm.
All right. Can you send me a list in the Discord chat of these so I don't forget? That would be good.
Me going and telling Frank Hickson got 75 yards when he didn't play.
Oh, yes. Yeah, write that one down too. I'll find them. I'll find clips for them all. But let's get in now that we've given our predictions for the final time this year. Wow, I can't believe we're here. End of the season. It's been a great season here so far, and we will be back on Sunday night after the game to recap it all. Stay tuned on social media or in the Discord community. We'll put the exact kind of time we're aiming to go live. I think Mike was aiming for this was his idea. We did Grey Cup post-game show last year and it went pretty well. I think we're thinking around 10 p.m. That would be 10 p.m. Central Time, I believe. But we will let you know on the social medias. And you'll get the notification if you subscribe on the YouTube channel as well that we are going live with that. It'll be on the podcast feeds the next morning as well. So look forward to that. Also, our season wrap-up show coming out Wednesday night, and then that off-season content starts. So if you have suggestions for teams we should take over with Madden, we may even relocate them to Canada for our off-season content. Look forward to that.
There's a choice. You can rename a team the Lumberjacks. I feel like you almost have to do that.
Yeah, can we rename them the Rough Riders? Come on. You want to be the Rough
Riders. They only have certain options. Lumberjacks. There's Elks, surprisingly enough.
Well, then we can... Yeah. Should we, first episode, we all show up in black turtlenecks, Chris Jones style, and we take over and move the team to be the Elks. There we go.
I think it's the Elks. It's either the Elks. There's like the Antlers and the Elks. I think there's two. I got to double check.
Yeah. So subscribe on the YouTube channel to stay tuned for all the off-season content around that as well. And we'll talk CFL here and there throughout the early off-season and then probably ramp it up around free agency also. In the meantime, check out the Discord community, link in the episode description. If you want to follow us on social media as well, you can do that. You can find us on Twitter or the old x.com at CF Countdown Pod. Also facebook.com/CF Countdown Pod to follow us there. You can find myself on Twitter at CooperTrooper42. Probably won't bring you much value to do so because I don't really tweet, but you can find me there. You can see a picture of my cat. I think I have on there if that interests you. You can find Mike at Mike Garrell. Again, hopefully we'll have him back for the wrap-up show or the Grey Cup recap on Sunday. Trey, what's all going on for you these days, and where can people find it?
Not a heck of a lot. You can find me at the X at Trey Harness Link. Real quick, it's not a bet, but we have to do it. What's the first halftime song, Adam?
It's Green Day, American Idiot.
Okay.
That was going to be my guess as well because it's the first Green Day song that came to my mind. So
I can guarantee you the last song too, Trey, if you want.
What's that?
Time of Your Life.
Okay, I'm gonna go. They're gonna start off with Boulevard of Broken Dream.
Oh, that would be a good one.
It's gonna start off slow, and they'll do that, get everyone hyped, and then no, we don't want to get kicked off YouTube. But anyway, X Trey Harness Link. Adam, man, where can people find you?
Well, you can probably find me in a hockey rink somewhere in the middle of Saskatchewan sometime. Hockey season starts this weekend. Big game here. Friday night, we play up in the land of the Great White North, known as Priestville, and then head down back home to open up the home barn and the home pasture up against the Rocanville Tigers. So in a finals rematch, so that'll be fun. Gonna have the player intros. We'll introduce the new banner. We got to go do like Vegas, go and have the little slot machine there and try to see if it'll print off the banner for us. I'm kidding, we ain't doing that. But nevertheless, you can find me at Adam Stewart 1 if you want to know what the Buffs, how the Buffaloes are doing, because I know this is the official unofficial podcast of the Buffaloes. So yeah, you can follow me on that, and of course I'll be watching the Grey Cup. Be sure to join me over on Discord with the rest of the guys watching that one as well.
Yeah, as the official, unofficial Canadian football podcast of the Theodore Buffaloes, you're flying us out for the banner raising, right? Like,
oh, absolutely. I mean, we're
first
sending
class,
the bus. Well, we can't afford
private
a
jet.
plane. No, we can't afford a private jet or a plane like some of these other senior teams around here can. But maybe we'll send the bus out.
No, Greyhound doesn't run no more, I thought.
Yeah, mainly because of Manitobans.
Or let's not get into that.
That's all I'll say on that one.
I'll switch up my vote on the Green Day song, by the way. I'll go with Know Your Enemy being the first song played by Green Day there. Just so I don't copy Adam on it. Make sure also you check out all the other great shows from around the Canadian Football Podcast Network at CF Pod Network on Twitter. You can find all of those there. Everybody's wrapping up their seasons. Lots of great content across all of the other shows. And whatever podcast platform you listen to ours on, we appreciate if you do all the fun things such as like, comment, subscribe, rate, review, share the show with your friends. Help us grow the show. We always appreciate that. On behalf of our panel here this evening, Trey and Adam, I'm Ryan saying enjoy Grey Cup 110. Enjoy the game. We'll talk to you after the game on Sunday. Thanks for listening. Take care. Have a good one. Bye.